Not really. I mean, I feel you come highly recommended as host, so I'm not at all worried.
Whew, well, that's a big thing to live into.
I've given up on doing well for this show, so I don't really care.
Rhyme or free, it doesn't matter to me. It's my bad poetry.
Good day and welcome to My Bad Poetry, a podcast where we take a deep dive into our poems from youth, yesteryear, or even yesterday, always asking the question, why in the world did I write this? I'm Aaron.
And I'm Dave.
And today we have with us a co-conspirator for our collective liberation, a podcaster, a poet, and the genderqueer menopause coach themselves, Lasara Firefox Allen. Welcome to My Bad Poetry.
Thank you for having me. I'm so pleased to be here and really excited to chat with you all today.
We'll see how long that lasts.
Yes. So you're part of the Thursday Night Poets, this writing group that has sent us so many amazing guests already. You want to tell us any more about that? We kind of make passive references on the occasion, but
Definitely. So I'm one of the founding members of that group. Robert Allen is the founder and facilitator of that group and who has been carrying it, I think, for like over 3 years now. It's been quite a run. Cool. Yeah. Robert's incredibly committed to the group and has, had a number of people rotate through over the years. I don't get to meet with them very often, just as far as scheduling goes. I actually have a competing writing group that evening, which is I work with Ariel Gore's Wayward Writers. And so we host a group writing event weekly or semi-weekly, depending. And we've been doing that since the beginning, for over 3 years as well. So wow. So yeah, so we're a writing family. I'm married to Robert. So yeah, we're a writing family and try to keep ourselves busy. The writing group that Robert runs is amazing, or facilitate and coordinates is just an amazing group of folks, super fun, committed writers, and prolific, as I said. Yeah, a lot of very, very published writers.
Now, speaking of prolific, your Amazon page of books that you have either co-authored or authored yourself is impressive. I mean, you have not only have poetry books like the Pussy Poems, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But you also have text on paganism as well as texts on genderqueer.
Yeah.
You write a lot.
I do write a lot, and I've been writing for a very long time. So that's part of why I have such an extensive writing history or publishing history. I've written for textbooks, encyclopedias. I wrote about the encyclopedia that I did an entry for was the Encyclopedia of Prostitution. So I'm a sex work advocate, decriminalization advocate. I have a diverse area of interest, and I actually will have some titles coming out in the next few years, but I can't quite talk about them yet.
Sure. Any poems or short stories or academic works that you're currently working on that you could talk about?
Yeah. So I am working on a lot of material around the genderqueer menopause topic.
Yeah.
Menopause is a very hot topic, we'll say, in our thank
Sure.
you, in our cultural consciousness. It's interesting because it's kind of the first time that we as a culture have been talking publicly about menopause.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's all very exciting. And as a genderqueer person, when I entered into the perimenopause experience, I found no resources really available for me that were affirming, literate. I had to do a lot of wading through very gendered language to get the information that I needed, which as a person who reads and writes a lot, I can do that. I just bleep out the words that are not helpful to me and relay my own. So I decided that, as a service to my community, that I would start doing that for us as a community. And so that's where that inspiration came from.
That's so amazing. Like that is just such a blessing to the community and to people who are going through a difficult process.
Yeah.
being able to find resources is such a powerful thing for validating them and loving them.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I really feel strongly about it, and a lot of my community does too. And I'm just grateful to have the opportunity to be able to be affirmed in that and be taking my material to a higher level and hopefully see it out in the wider world soon.
Now, I put in the intro you're a podcaster because you have a podcast about this topic?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and what is that called?
It's called the Genderqueer Menopause Coach Podcast, and it is fairly new. I've only had, and this is an interesting problem that I have, which is there are not very many of us doing this work.
Oh,
And so finding guests to host is not the easiest proposition. So so it takes me a little bit between episodes because I actually have to find folks that I want to give a platform to. So that's, I do have potential guests, crossing my fingers, hoping, but I do have a potential guest who I'm very excited about coming up for the next interview. And the interviews that I've done so far have been, really great and fun and affirming, and just a real delight to speak with the folks that I've been able to talk to so far.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Well, to bring us into the realm of bad poetry, which is what we're talking about today, Dave, what hastily written poem of the week do you bring to the table?
This is a poem I am calling Sometimes I Can't Sleep. I wait for my brain to slow. Breathing evens out. Meditation grinds down my alert. Sleep drifts over me after an hour and a half. Or I push my eyes open for one more page, one more level, one more story, straining against rest until my eyes fall like iron gates or motes of dust.
Hey.
There's no sarcastic turn at the end.
No.
I know.
That's a surprise for you. Okay. Motes of dust. The hanging image you have there. What?
I like that. I like the iron gate slamming down or motes of dust just like kind of gently falling.
Okay. How are you defining moat?
Oh! I didn't consider like moat around a castle.
Yeah,
iron gate definitely
and moat.
Considered that. No, that was intentional. I definitely spelled it correctly that way. Then
is a moat
that's
of
interesting.
Dust, is a moat of dust like those floating,
like a
things?
sparkle of dust? Yeah. No.
Hanging in the air, yes.
Yeah.
I love that image, honestly. I love that image as a sleep image. I love it as an image in general. I think there's a lot in that piece that's, absolutely beautiful and workable.
Yeah. Look at you.
I'm a genius. I know. I'm the greatest mind currently alive. I get it. It's definitely not just some trash I typed into Google.
I still want to see that Google Doc where you have all your hastily written poems for this show. But speaking of which, I'm looking at a Google Doc with some poems that you, Lasara, have given us. I'm not even sure what this first title means.
So it's HftRR, which is Hooray for the Riffraff. I've heard of Hooray for the Riffraff, but they are phenomenal. They're a great band. They have an album that just came out recently called The Past is Still Alive. And it's kind of Americana, with really like very old school punk rock messaging.
Cool. Well then, that just fills up my afternoon.
Right? I'm writing it down right now because you said, punk rock, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm on board.
Hooray for the Riffraff has been around for quite a long time. I think over a decade. And one of the things that I love about this performance group is that they're very diverse. They have a lot of different musical influences. They're based in New Orleans. The lead is from Brooklyn, I believe Brooklyn, but New York for sure. And the lead is non-binary and genderqueer like me.
Nice. Wow. That's awesome. Now you've given us a bad poem about them or something. So let's hear this poem.
Yeah.
And then we'll dive in.
Okay, sounds great. All right. Last night I went to worship, only it was a concert hall, not a church or even a cathedral of living redwoods. Hands raised high in celebration and supplication, we prayed for the dissolution of America, for the redemption and protection of tender ones protected by chains and knives. Mirror of my life, the priests called out our stories under the watchful eyes of a graffitied virgin, standing guard over the innocence of wandering souls.
Okay, there's a lot in this that I like.
Yeah.
So let me explain why I feel like this
Yes,
is
please.
a bad poem.
Sure.
This to me, okay, so I love it. And it is super personal and super like almost, I don't know, almost saccharin, like, melancholic, like idealization of really, excuse me, but fucked up states of youth, right?
Sure.
No.
So there's a lot of kind of like, it's not a poem that I would try to get published for sure. I don't think it's a good poem, yet it has emotional meaning for me, right?
Sure.
But I think that that's not emotional meaning necessarily that would graph across to a large segment of readers.
Yeah.
So it's like a nostalgia based, right? It's a nostalgia poem.
Sure.
Yeah, for sure. And there's definitely not nearly enough nostalgia in our current culture, right?
I love the fact that there's like, it's so funny. Like, I'm 50 plus. And so, now vintage is, 80s and 90s
Gosh,
and
yeah.
2000s. And
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, wait, I still have some of those clothes.
Right? I have them patched because, they've been falling apart in my closet.
Right.
Yeah, it just makes you think that I just yearn for the days when nostalgia was good, I'm just so... I just think back to those days and I yearn for them. I wish there was a word for it, but I can't find it.
So what I'm hearing you say is in this poem, it might be kind of hyper specific in its experience, doesn't translate well, and yet you're also looking back, maybe with a titch of an eye roll for how idealized this concert experience was in your youth.
Well, this so interesting. The concert experience was recent.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let me give a little preface on the works that I'm sharing today. These are all actually from the 30 and 30 April experiment.
Oh, wow.
So
That's incredible. Okay.
all of the poems I shared with you for today are from the 30 and 30 this year. So that's why this poem is bad, because it's definitely not to the standard. One, it was written hastily.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Two, it's not written to the standard, to my own standards for,
Sure.
quality work at this point in my time.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you're looking back on a previous concert and trying to catch that idyllic euphoria?
So the concert was actually recent too.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
The nostalgia is purely what Hooray for the Riffraff sort of brought up in me. So the whole album of The Past Is Still Alive, it's a concept album, I guess, but it is full of nostalgia for the leads growing up as a gutter punk.
Sure.
It's Americana based on punk experience. So like they rode the rails, they were unhoused, they, had a lot of friends that they've lost to, overdoses. Like they write about all of that. They sing about all of that in this album. It's a very sort of emotionally fraught album. And it hit for me in a very profound way, because these are not stories that we hear. And this album got some acclaim and recognition. And so these are just not stories that you hear, every day on Spotify or whatever, So like, references to hoodies and track marks and, riding the rails and like eating out of garbage pails and, dumpster diving, like all of the things that for me, that's like, yeah, that's real. That's what it was about. That's the life. And so the experience, I went to the concert in April with a buddy of mine, and it was a phenomenal concert, absolutely phenomenal concert and a great experience. And like the resurrection of so many ghosts,
That's me and Taylor Swift. I get that. Cishet white guy.
But you do capture that with Mirror of My Life in the third stanza here. That nostalgic kind of resonance you were feeling in the moment.
Yeah.
Okay. So this, I can see why the number of layers you had to peel back for this poem to make sense.
Right.
Yep. Okay. I see that.
Yep. Right. Exactly. If I'd written this 20 years ago, I would have had a different view of it.
Sure.
At the point that I'm writing it, writing at in my life now, it's just not, it's indulgent.
Yeah. I like how you evoke saccharin. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. Dave, what do you think of this one?
I mean, it's not as good as my poem, but no, I actually kind of like it. I think that what I'm trying to say, I guess, is I don't think I would get out of it what you would want me to.
Right.
Like, I think it's a beautiful poem, and I think I could find a lot of growth for myself in it, but I don't think it's what you were writing. It just doesn't do the thing,
Right. Agreed.
Nice. Yeah. Huh.
And thank you. I love that you get a lot out of it anyway.
I really do like it. Especially the dissolution of America and all that good stuff. Takes me back to, punk rock days.
Exactly.
I'm curious if, because you said this was coming out of your 30/30 writing, is this a standard style of yours, or were you experimenting on that day? You have 3 stanzas, very short lines that you're working with here.
So it's the narrative model is definitely something I write from a lot. I don't necessarily I'm not necessarily always as like clipped in the rhythm.
Sure.
And that, but it's not dissimilar from a lot of the sort of cadence that I would use normally.
Sure. Yeah, I'm looking at it, and the way that it's formatted, because there's no punctuation and very short lines, it really draws the eye to these capitalized letters along the left side here. And yet it's not an acrostic. My mind continually wants it to be. I'm looking at this like, how fuff.
What's funny about that is that I actually typed it in Facebook, right? We were doing a Facebook group for the 30 and 30 that Robert pulled together. And the Facebook formatting defaulted to, because I hit a return, defaulted to capitalization. So were I to actually put any energy into this poem, I would go through and remove some of those capitals. But since it's a bad poem, I probably won't.
Right.
Fair enough.
That gets to a much deeper conversation on the medium in which art is created and how it informs, but we don't need to get there. So let's move on to this next one, because the title is very intriguing for me. Dimestore Shaman.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Waiting for inspiration is like waiting for lightning strike. I stand in the storm, rod in hand, and wait for the shock to shake me. Sometimes the rod remains a lifeless wand, inert, and I, a dime store shaman with nothing but show to offer.
I love that last line, with nothing but show to offer. That's very good.
Thank you.
That's a good tag.
Who knows? This is one I could see revising to the
Sure,
point of
sure.
being a good poem. It would take work, but I could see there are some pieces, some lines, some words, some elements of this piece that I could see potentially.
Yeah, I do think it's kind of funny that the first thing you evoke is inspiration is like waiting for a lightning strike. It's like you're working with a very almost common simile there. I mean, light bulb, lightning strike. I mean, but then where you go with it, like you're wanting to be struck, so that a lifeless wand. I like that. But the first line is like, well, tell me something new.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What I think, gosh, was it 2 weeks ago, Dave, you evoked 25 or 624,
Yeah.
where it's the song by Chicago, where it's all about writer's block. This poem kind of reminds me, it's a similar vein where it's a poem that's about writer's block, right?
Yes.
And yet something has come out of it. Yeah, like you said, there probably needs to a lot of work, but there's something there. Where'd you get the phrase dime store shaman?
I don't know. Honestly, I think that I have used that phrase before and many, many years ago in a different poem.
Okay.
I couldn't find it, but I have, I don't know, millions in my computer and in books and, on pieces of scrap paper and, et cetera.
No.
So there's no way I know where that is, but I think I have used the image before, and it kind of is like one, I come from a magical background and upbringing. I'm a practicing witch, and still shaman is not ever a term that I would use to describe myself. It's protected word. It doesn't belong to me as a person to describe myself. So, so there are a lot of like, sometimes when people call themselves shamans or shaman or however they want to say it, I have an immediate eye roll. It's just, it's a term that makes me not take folks as seriously as I would if we're not using that term, unless they're from Mongolia and they're actually trained in, or Syria or, somewhere that has shamanic traditions, or Tibet, right? They're Tibetan shamans. Like if it's a cultural thing, for sure, I think a lot of folks use the term too loosely. So that crossed with the idea of those, dime store Indian, right?
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that sort of Western states sort of iconography. Sort of a mashup of that and sort of, again, distinctly personal context, like no one would get all of that from it.
Yeah.
Yet, those are the sort of the elements that evoked that phrase.
For sure. That makes a lot of sense.
So, like, What I'm hearing in that is possibly a little bit of like that imposter syndrome of you are clearly a very talented poet who has done amazing work, and in this you're wondering about, when will inspiration strike? Will it ever strike? Was it just a one-off thing? Was it just a lightning bolt? Or am I just something I can't
imposter.
even claim? Yeah.
Right. Well, and there's also another part in here that bears recognition is that second stanza is also, I mean, I don't know how obviously, but an allusion to impotence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A rod standing inert.
Yeah.
Rod and
Yeah.
wand. I mean, neither
Right.
of those have any sexual
Right.
notations at all.
So yeah, so it's like it's that, I think it's that moment of where you're reaching for, the expression that is possible, but it's elusive, right? You can't pin it down, you can't pull it in, you can't, and writer's block honestly is something that I have strategies around. I, knock on wood, but I barely ever, I barely ever experience any substantial writer's block. And when I do, I have ways to get through it. And those ways are just right. Like your enemy is the empty page, just get something down. And when I do that, sometimes it's, crap for the first page or the first paragraph or the first 3 pages or whatever, but sooner or later I catch flow. That's it's a pretty accessible state for me at this point, because I'm a pretty highly trained writer at this point.
Right.
So getting to flow, and I don't want to jinx myself, but like getting to flow is something that it's just like any other training strategy, right? If you're weight training or running or whatever, you have to practice, and then you get to the point where those states are more accessible. Like you can lift heavier, you can run further, you can, don't get winded as easily. Writing is a skill, and it's one that I know this is debatable, but I think that everyone has the capacity to write.
Yeah.
And I think that literally anyone can become a skilled writer if they put the time and energy into it. Right.
Yeah. I mean, and the fact that these that you're bringing to us is from your 30 to 30 just kind of shows the muscle that you have worked on, that these come out of a hastily written poem so far into your career of writing. Because I guarantee you, if I found poems like this in my back catalog, I would be like, hey, I'm pretty good. but what I find in both of these is that kind of you're seeking almost euphoria, and yet fearing that artificiality of it.
I can see that. And, I mean, I was just saying to someone, saying this to someone yesterday, like being in writing flow, it's a magical place to be.
Yeah.
Right. It's a magical place to be. It's the place where I feel the most like naturally at ease, like both excited and relaxed. Right. It's a great place to be. None of us can live there, but it's a great place to be. And so, like, I just love the exercise of writing. I love writing. I love it. Even, unpolished, even, bad writing. Like I love doing it. It's the exercise of the art itself.
Yeah.
As much as anything else.
That's cool.
I love that concept just because I am not a writer. Like that is not something that I am skilled at. And I believe you though that anybody, if they put their mind to it, if they work on it, if they exercise that, you can get there. Because that's something I've said about music for so long, is that anybody can learn to play ukulele. It's the easiest instrument in the world, and from there anybody could learn to play guitar. and you kind of find that flow where I don't care if people are listening to me, even if I'm screwing up, because I'm enjoying it. I'm finding that moment. And I think that really does come out in these poems, is your flow of how you write and how you find that peace and that expression, that it doesn't matter if it makes sense to anybody else. It makes sense to you.
Right. Right. And again, such a huge part of it is, and it depends, of course, on what I'm writing, but such a huge part of it is the joy of flying.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I want you give us a 3-stanza one again. Do you typically like writing in stanzas?
I do like writing in stanzas, and that is, I think, probably, it's like pauses for me between breaths or between thoughts, or concepts, whatever it might be. But for me, it's that punctuation. The stanza break itself is punctuation.
Yeah, you're actually very light on punctuation in both of these.
Yes.
Yeah.
The only one I see is a single M dash after lightning strike.
So for me, punctuation is driven in my poetry both by stanza breaks and sometimes by capitalization.
Sure.
Very cool. Okay. So if you were to play around with Dimestore Shaman a bit more, where do you think you might take this piece if you were just to pick it up again?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I would want to start it with a more sort of unique, entry point.
Yeah.
An icon catalog, right? And that would change the whole of it, because that, it's all kind of built on the concept of the lightning strike. So I'd have to figure out how to be creative with the entry point while still using the term lightning strike, so that the concept of running around with a wand trying to catch some fire, continues to make sense. Yeah, so that would be my first hurdle.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you, after reading back these poems that you've shared with us, that you yourself are hypercritical about, that we as like novices would have no clue?
I mean,
You as a novice, Aaron. Me as a genius.
Obviously the sloppiness of the capitalization on the first poem, and I would want to read through all 3 of these, honestly, for a capitalization check, because I do use capitalization intentionally as punctuation to bring more influence or importance to that line break or that word. So I want to make sure that the capitalization is consistent and that it's intentional.
Nice. Very cool.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, these are fun. And I'm just impressed you did 30 and 30. I know that it's a running tradition, but I heard about it this year and I was just like, oh gosh, that's a lot.
It is. And, I've done 30 and 30 for many years. I don't know. I can't say how many, probably not a decade, but maybe close to it. And, maybe like 6 or 7 years. And I haven't always hit the mark of 30.
Sure.
But I have hit the mark of 30 more often than not. And that doesn't mean that like some days it's like I wrote probably 4 haiku this year, right? I wrote one 4-line stanza, I think, that was about phoning it in, right? Poem, so they're funny and they're like, okay, I did it,
right.
check mark, but they aren't necessarily, quality poems.
Sure. No. Sure.
That's the marathon training of it, is you're getting stuff on a page and being able to say, oh, this is something I can turn into something, and others that you would like to throw in the fire and never think about again.
Exactly. You know, and I also, I mean, I did NaNoWriMo, not the November, I did the April NaNoWriMo, Camp NaNoWriMo last year
Mm.
and wrote 50,000 words in 30 days. So, you know, I did that, which I wasn't sure I'd be able to hit that, but I did. And, you know, it needs a lot of work, but it's a novel and I'd never written a novel before. So, I mean, I think that is right. That is the practice. That's
Yeah.
getting your chops in so that you can get to the point where you feel relatively confident that you write crap for 3 pages and then find flow, you know.
Yeah, you just need to wait for that lightning bolt from the sky. I feel like I just came up with that.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, all of it is to the good. All of it is, you know, no matter whether the quality of what you're producing really doesn't matter for the most part, unless you want to do something with it. And
Sure.
then it will take extra work to make it, you know, to get it there. It's just like any other, just like music, right? Just like you were saying, Dave, you know, and by the way, I want to learn how to play ukulele and I've been trying to prioritize it for years, but it's so hard. I was like, at some point, I'm going to actually get myself some classes because I need structure.
It's super fun. It's
I
so
know
great.
it is so fun. It is. I self-taught myself for a little while and I got to the point where I could play a few songs. I couldn't easily strum and sing at the same time yet.
Yeah.
That's a challenge, but I loved it. And then I haven't for the last couple of years. And I'm just like,
Find yourself a teacher.
in
No.
my spare time.
I just started teaching lessons, so you just got to make your way out to Minnesota.
Okay, sounds like a deal.
Dave, how did I not know this?
I've been doing it all summer. It's been great.
Wow. That's awesome. Another side of Dave. Well, Lasara, you have an impressive amount of poems in your back catalog. Is it Pussy Poems or Pussy
It's called the
Poem?
Pussy Poems, and it is like, I think it's 14 shorter pieces that comprise one larger work.
Now, that was a protest piece about something in a law passed in Wisconsin. Am I getting that right?
So it was basically the pieces were written when I was writing my first book, Sexy Witch, which was in 2005, published in 2005 by Llewellyn. And those pieces, the Pussy Poems, are born of an exercise that's in the book because I did all the exercise as I went through the book, right? So that I could make sure that they worked and they worked for me and my readers, you know, my test readers. So I did all the exercises. So this was out of that, right? This collection, but I hadn't done anything with them until 2012 when I believe her name is Lisa Brown. A legislator was censured for saying the word vagina on the House or Senate floor while debating abortion rights. So she was censured and not allowed to speak on the topic anymore for saying the word that relates directly to the law. Right. Yeah. And so I was like, well, if we can't say vagina, well, let's say pussy, you know. So I did this whole thing. I did a crowdfunding campaign, self-published, and published the Pussy Poems as a response to that instance of censure.
Nice.
Yeah.
So then you can find all of those poems and more in The Sexy Witch.
So you can't find them in Sexy Witch. You have to actually order the Pussy Poems. You can order them off Amazon or just contact me and I can send them to you directly. And then, yeah, that's the way to get those. And, you know, I mean, they're like, it's so funny because people are like, I've heard these before. They're like recordings. I don't know, somewhere on the internet. I don't know where.
Huh. Nice. Well, I don't think these are selections from that. But
no, these are actually from 30 and 30.
Oh, perfect. So we've gotten 2 of your bad poems from this 30 and 30. And we here at My Bad Poetry, we end each week with the words of a true poet. Would you be willing to read for us another one of your poems from 30 and 30 here to
Yes.
close out the show.
Yeah, and this one I love, and I'm gonna try to get published at some point. It needs a little work still, a little editing, but
Okay.
but I love it. So it's called Shark Smile, and it's a 2-piece poem. Shark Smile. 1. Free verse. Buzzing in my skull, 100,000 hornets, vibrating the seams where bone meets bone. No silence in this listless night. I search instead for something louder to counter the edge of hum. Wide awake in the wee hours, I find a task, any task, to carry me through to daylight. I will not be able to run like this forever, but for now, like a shark, I just keep moving. 2. Haibun. My coping methods are not completely functional, but at least they're adaptive. My therapist says adaptive is a station on the train ride to functional and gives me a pass. An elasma rank. Shark smile in deep waters. This is active rest.
Ooh.
I don't know that it needs much work. I think that's gorgeous.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love this. And just because it's kind of funny to me, I love how strangely this wide awake in the wee hours, I find a task, any task to carry me through, is in some small way a callback to Dave's poem about finding sleep.
Yeah.
It's a perfect, it just rhymes. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So part 3 will be called Dave Needs a Nap.
Yes, there we go.
Love it.
So this, okay, elasma branch. What is this word? What is this?
So that's a family of fish, cartilaginous fish. So and many other species are elasmobranchs.
Cool.
Aaron, you've lost your Greek. Come on.
Should I recognize these?
What elasmos, meaning to bend.
Oh my gosh.
Come on!
Actually, it's funny because this also has an embedded reference to an indie band.
Oh, really?
Of course it does.
Yeah.
Okay. Where is this hidden reference?
It's in the title, Shark Smile,
Okay.
and it is Adrian Lenker, Shark Smile. Adrian Lenker, Big Thief.
Big Thief. I have heard of Big Thief.
Okay. Big Thief, yes.
Okay.
So Big Thief has a song called Shark Smile, which is nothing like this poem or nothing about it. It's just that the title is referential.
Nice. So was that your jumping off point then?
No, actually, I named it after I'd written it. The sort of thematic elements behind this poem are related to a lot of things, but technically, I mean, I would say specifically about living with PTSD and the inability to sit easily. So the idea of continuing to move, and this is also a generational thing. My father is, the same way, like just incessant movement, always. So like that sort of like awareness that it's not going to be tenable to run myself this hard for forever.
Sure.
But this is about, I really keep myself very busy. And obviously. And so this is about that ceaseless movement in order to avoid stillness.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
That active rest. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, is there anything else you want to kind of promote or throw out there?
Keep your eyes on this space, as they say. My Amazon page should be growing, hopefully in the near future. And I have a lot of projects brewing, and I'm very excited about them. And if you want to find me, you can find me on the socials, Lasara Firefox Allen, just pretty much anywhere. My Substack. Feel free to look me up, drop me a note, say hi.
This has been My Bad Poetry.
Now go write some of your own bad poetry.
You also have a Wikipedia page. I'm just gonna say that. That's pretty cool. Made my my guest research easier. Rhyme free doesn't matter to me.